The 64 Yoginis are a band of mysterious, powerful female figures from ancient Indian tantric traditions. Shrouded in intrigue, they have long captured the imagination of those fascinated by the mystical side of Hinduism and Buddhism. So just who are these 64 Yoginis, and why are they so significant? Let's uncover their origins, magic, temples, and more in this mystical journey through history. But before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and show your support by liking this video. The cult of the 64 Yoginis first emerged around the 6th to 7th century CE, rising in popularity during the 9th to 12th centuries, when their worship reached its peak. The foundations of Yogini veneration actually originated outside orthodox Brahmanical practices, having strong ties to rural, folk, and tribal traditions of the time. The 64 Yoginis are said to have arisen from the even more primeval cults of the Matrikas and Grama Devatas. The Matrikas were 8 mother goddesses representing forces of nature. The Grama Devatas were local village guardian goddesses, each protecting her own village and granting blessings like protection from scorpion stings. Over time, these rural goddesses merged into more standardized groupings. The 64 number holds deep significance in Hindu tantric numerology, being connected to the currents in the human body and many mystical and magical correspondences. The Yoginis are linked to the Tantric Kaula and Nath traditions. Historical evidence shows the Yogini Kaula tradition was thriving by the 10th century in both Hindu and Buddhist lineages. They were associated with siddhis, or advanced spiritual powers like flying and shape-shifting. So what exactly are the 64 Yoginis? They are described as a sorority or band of female figures, so the term doesn't refer to solitary yoginis. They are young and beautiful, but fierce and dangerous goddesses, reminiscent of the Dakinis of Buddhism. The Yoginis possess magical powers and esoteric knowledge. They can confer blessings, wealth, and supernatural abilities onto their devoted followers. Some texts portray them as flesh-eating and blood-drinking beings who gather in dark, remote places like cremation grounds. While their origins may have been tribal, over time the Yoginis were integrated into mainstream Hinduism. They came to be seen either as expressions of the supreme Mahadevi, attendants of the great goddess, or acolytes of the Matrika goddesses. The Yoginis are often depicted with fiery, grotesque iconography. They may have fanged mouths, bulbous eyes, and nude, voluptuous bodies. They are ornamented with crowns of bone and snake jewelry. Their mounts include frogs, jackals, elephants, bulls, corpses, and mythical beings. They may have anywhere from 2 to 10 arms, expressing their multifaceted powers. As tantric deities, the 64 Yoginis are said to possess an array of mystical and magical abilities. These include anima, shrinking, mahima, growing, lagima, levitating, prakamya, fulfilling desires, and kamavasayitva, controlling passions. These special powers are known as the 8 great siddhis. The Yoginis can also confer more mundane blessings like wealth, good crops, children, and protection. Their followers strive to propitiate them through intense tantric worship rites so that the goddesses may reveal their hidden teachings and bestow gifts. The 64 Yoginis are propitiated through highly esoteric tantric rituals known as chakra puja. In these rites, devotees meditate on the 64 spokes of a Yogini yantra to invoke each Yogini's energy. Chakra pujas make use of mantras, offerings, identification with mystical diagrams, and ritual sex acts to unite with the Yoginis. The Yogini cult involves secret, taboo practices, like the ritual consumption of wine, meat, fish, and sexual fluids as offerings. The goal is to transcend ordinary awareness and tap into the powerful liminal energy of the Yoginis for magical attainments. Partaking in a chakra puja led by a guru allows devotees to experience union with each Yogini in turn and gain their spiritual gifts. The rites take place in a sacred circular temple or mandala setting. Across India, there exist around a dozen ruined but evocative temples dedicated to the 64 Yoginis. Though now abandoned, these circular open-air temples from the 9th to 12th centuries CE still emanate powerful energies according to legend. The main surviving temples are found at Hirapur, Bhairagat, Khajuraho, Ranipur Jarial, and Bedagat in central India. Each temple is unique, with its own distinct set of 64 Yogini images and goddesses. The Yoginis are carved individually on niches around the inner temple perimeter. Inside the open mandala-like space, devotees would gather for esoteric rituals to invoke the 64 Yoginis. Temples feature striking iconography of the goddesses and often depict macabre imagery like skull cups, severed heads, and corpses, symbols of the Yoginis' power over death. Even in ruins, the temples provide insight into the enigmatic world of the 64 Yoginis. The 10th century Hirapur temple in Odisha is the best preserved 64 Yogini complex. It is an open, hypaethereal temple, allowing the Yoginis to be worshipped under the open sky. Inside the outer walls, it has 64 individual Yogini statues arranged in a circle. Each statue has its own niche and image. The Yoginis are depicted in a variety of forms, standing, dancing, on mounts like goats and bulls, playing instruments and holding weapons and skulls. They reflect both their individual natures and tantric powers. Bedagat in Madhya Pradesh hosts another ancient 64 Yogini temple by a scenic waterfall. Built from local sandstone, it has a circular mandapa hall with a raised platform. Figures of the 64 Yoginis adorn the perimeter. Each has her own identity, posture, and attributes. The temple exemplifies how the cult of the 64 Yoginis was popularized through sacred architecture. Another one is the Ranipur Jarial temple. This temple in Odisha has 64 Yoginis portrayed in dancing poses, corresponding to legends of the wild, ecstatic dancing of the goddesses. As in other shrines, each Yogini has her own niche and image. The delicate figures convey a sense of energy, movement, and grace. Carvings also include skulls and plump Yoginis, reflecting the edgy tantric side of these goddesses. Aside from historical sources, legends about the 64 Yoginis abound in Hindu and Jain lore. The Agni Purana describes how they were created from 8 mothers, with 8 Yoginis born from each one, totaling 64. Various texts give differing lists of the Yoginis' names and identities. One story relates how the Yoginis consumed a demon's flesh and blood at Shiva's command. Another says they were originally mind-born powers that took shape to help the goddess Durga defeat demons. In Jain tales, Yakshi attendants of Tirthankaras morph into 64 Yoginis. The Yoginis are described as wandering the skies, frequenting cremation grounds, and inhabiting remote places like mountains and forests. Their depictions evolved from tribal origins into full-fledged tantric goddesses with ornate features. So why were the cult of the 64 Yoginis and their shrines so significant historically? They shed light on the diversity of ancient Indian religion beyond mainstream Brahmanical Hinduism. The importance given to these wild, tribal-inspired goddesses reveals the power of folk cults and tantric traditions. The Yogini temples, ritual objects, and legends provide a window into highly esoteric and underground mystical practices that persisted over centuries. Devotees sought to access the Yogini's power and teachings to gain magical abilities, thrive in life, and reach exalted spiritual states. Their ferocious, sensual imagery demonstrates the antinomian spirit of Tantra in rejecting orthodoxy. The 64 Yoginis exemplify how reverence for the sacred feminine took multifarious forms in ancient India, from benign to fearsome. Even in the modern era, the cult of the 64 mystical Yoginis continues to intrigue spiritual seekers, artists, and researchers. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed our content, kindly show your support by liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more.